Our insurance office needs to run like McDonald's. If you get a cheeseburger in New York, if you get a cheeseburger in LA, it's the exact same cheeseburger.
In today's episode, Courtney and I sit down with Bradley Hamner. Bradley is the owner of Business Growth Curator. He's also the owner of the podcast Club Capital. This episode is juicy. We walk through Bradley's beginning entrepreneurship, his journey of almost having a heart attack, the changes he had to make as a business owner and entrepreneur, going from Rainmaker to architect, the importance of getting in the room, and so much more. So excited for this one. With that being said, let's start the show. Hey, welcome to the Insurance Buzz. We are your host, Michael and Courtney Weaver, and we have a special guest with us today, Bradley Hamner. Bradley, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, we're pumped.
We are so excited. We're going to jump right in because all of us have our Howard Stern headphones on. We are in our podcasting space. We're ready to get into it. I want to jump into your entrepreneurial journey because you've been at this game for a while. I want to hear kind of that process and what led you into doing what you're doing right now in the coaching space.
Yeah. So first I'll go all the way back, if you don't mind, to my dad. My dad has been a huge influence in my life. He's an entrepreneur. He's in the farming space. And one of the biggest things that I wouldn't say my dad taught, but I caught from my dad is just hard work. I can remember very vividly, he missed some of my ball games and certainly practices when I was growing up, because when you're farming, you've got harvest season, planting season, et cetera.
Okay.
And
I don't want to interrupt you, but I grew up on a farm. So my immediate question was, are we livestock or are we row crop? So, okay, continue.
Yeah, both.
Sorry. Okay.
Both. He's got a couple hundred head of cattle. But I had really bad allergies, so I never got into that. That was just not going to be my thing. My brother has certainly taken that path now. But my dad farmed at one time about 10,000 acres. I think they're around 5,000 at this point right now. So they farmed just so much, and that's been a big part of my life. And so I really caught hard work from my dad. And so after school, I was in sales positions. Never was going to go down the path with my dad of farming. Again, really because I couldn't. I mean, allergies and asthma and other things, it just was not my thing. And I also just don't think that was just God's gift for me to do that. Like, I just never had an interest in that at all. And so I was playing golf. I'm a big golfer. Anybody knows me. I love to play golf. And this guy said, you know what, I think you should start your own business. And so in 2010, I started my agency in 2010. So that started me down the path. And I always had this desire when I was in school to want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have that language, but I wanted to own a business. And I didn't really know what that was going to be. I certainly wasn't going to start a restaurant. But I wanted to be in control and that's kind of why I like sales, is because I want to be in control of my performance. I want to be in control of the money. And so when that opportunity came about, I was like, oh, this is great. I get to lead people. I get to be in sales, which I really love. And so, yeah, that's what led me down that path in 2010. It was a struggle. It was absolutely a struggle. I was able to, just through my own sheer will and determination, get the business off the ground for that first 3 or 4 years. But I absolutely hit a brick wall, and that was in 2014 or so. And I was burning the midnight oil truly, morning, noon, and night. And I'll never forget this day. I was doing CrossFit at the time. I don't do that anymore, but I was doing that at the time. We ran around the parking lot, and I started having these major chest pains. It kind of felt like an electrical shock. So I went home, called a physician friend of mine. He was like, hey, well, you need to get over here right now. I went over there. He does an EKG on me. I'm 34 at the time. And he was like, hey, Bradley, I see something on here that's concerning to me. Well, that threw me into even more of a panic. And he gave me something to kind of calm me down. I got into a cardiologist that day. Within the next couple of days, they ran some tests, and they said, look, I think you need to get off caffeine. And also, what in the world is going on? Like, tell me what your lifestyle is like. And I was like, I'm working all the time. And so at the end of the day, my business had really plateaued. What the skills that I had to get the business off the ground were not the skills that I needed to be able to take it to the next level. And I simply ran out of time in the day. There was not enough time to answer the emails, answer the phone calls, respond to everybody, lead the team, recruit. I just couldn't do it. And I wish I could tell you that was like, the next day my life turned around. No, I mean, it was a pattern of a couple of years of really saying, this is not working. So that's a little bit about my story.
First of all, I'm incredibly jealous that you have allergy issues and you got out of that whole experience. I would like to send this podcast to my dad and my mom and say, hey, we could have negotiated a little bit better. But you brought up this health risk, like your whole body is saying something is wrong.
Yeah.
I'm curious, if that wouldn't have happened, how much longer do you think you could have gone at that pace?
I don't know. I don't think much longer. I'm not sure. I was getting so disenfranchised thinking, man, there's got to be more to this. This entrepreneurial dream, the American dream of owning a small business. This is not what I signed up for. I was frustrated. My relationships were, with my wife were not good at the time. Mm-hmm. I had neglected friendships. I was just really frustrated. And I think that I don't know. I don't know if I would have called it quits and gone back and taken a W-2 job and gone back into pharmaceuticals, which is what I was doing before. I don't know, but something had to give. Bottom line is something had to give. And so that was a really, really hard time in my life. But I learned a lot from that. And so from there, I ended up launching a few other businesses a couple of years later off the back of that learning. And so really at the end of the day, I mean, you've heard it said before, your mess becomes your message. Well, that's part of my message. And, you don't get into it thinking, along the way, you don't make these decisions thinking that you're painting yourself into a corner. You just don't. You're trying to make the right decisions on a daily basis, but that's part of my story. And I completely burn out. I was 34 at the time. I should not be burning out at 34. I should be in peak condition at that point, but that was not my story. So I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. I think part of me thinks I would have doubled down or tripled down, but I was already doing that. I was already doing that, Courtney. Like I was already just giving everything I had. And so I don't know if I'd ever gotten to the point to call it quits and kind of wave the white flag and say, I just can't do this. But it definitely crossed my mind.
I love what you just said. The mess becomes the message. And at 34, you're right. You shouldn't experience burnout. I was just having a conversation with somebody about this the other day. I don't care how passionate you are about something. I don't care how much you're driven. You cannot just work and work and work and work and not experience burnout. I'm a firm believer. No. Like you can't do 18-hour days every day for your entire life, or it's going to wear on you, or else you're going to cut time off of your life, period. And so
Absolutely.
I would love to know, so from 2014 to 2017, it sounds like you went through quite the transition as a business owner, leader, entrepreneur. Yep. I would love for you to walk us through what that transition looked like.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question, because I sometimes don't get to actually talk about what then actually specifically happened. So in 2000, and I think this is late 2015, somewhere in there, I'm in Toronto. Maybe it's 2016. This is a big moment. I'm in Toronto and I'm talking to an entrepreneur, and he comes in. He's just a cool looking guy. He was totally laid back, and he just gave a vibe out like he was just, everything was cool. So we're doing this exercise, and at the time the business was doing like $500,000 top line revenue, something like that. And so we do this exercise, and we're basically talking about like, well, what would the business be if you 10x'd it, like 10x the business? And so I'm doing this math, and I'm like, okay, 5 million, like, what would a business have to be doing if I was doing $5 million top line revenue? So we get paired together. He's sitting next to me. I wish I could remember his name, because I would go back and actually send him a gift, like talk to him, because this is a big moment in my life. So we do this exercise. I go first, and so I'm talking through it. And he's like really engaged in it. And then he doesn't. He says, so we did 40 million last year, top line. I brought home 5 million personally. So if we did that, we would go 400 million. This is what would have to happen. I was like, wait a second. You did personally $5 million top line revenue yourself, like personal income to you personally was $5 million last year. I was like, yeah, like it was no big deal. And he was in financial services. He owned a financial services company doing $40 million top line. He was a former athlete. Like I connected with him in a lot of things, and it blew my mind. That made me begin to kind of see things a little bit differently. And I got around other entrepreneurs who were thinking so much bigger. That was a big moment for me because I'd never really been around that. I felt like all the discussions I was having, Courtney, were all the same. It was like we're just kicking around ideas. And I actually thought, the way they are thinking, the way they are talking, I've never heard people talk about this before. As a matter of fact, I was super uncomfortable. This is the first time I'd ever shared somebody my revenue number, somebody else. I was like, well, I can't talk about that. I can talk about all these other metrics, but I'm not going to talk about revenue. I'm not going to talk about profit. That made me super uncomfortable. And these people are just sharing this stuff like totally freely. No big deal. Like this is what the numbers are. This is great. People are not judging it. They're not, I guess I was almost like, a part of me had shame. Admittedly, I walked in, I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I should not even be in this room. But that was a big, big moment for me. So number one, I really understood the value of community, or started to understand the value of community in the business world. I think also too, again, I didn't have language around this, but environment dictates performance. And so like who I was around, who I was surrounding myself with, not just friends, but in business, I realized they were having different conversations and I wanted more of that. So I started to really make the investments to be in the rooms and at the tables with people thinking bigger than me. And that's been a big thing for me, is to always be, so even my coaches that I have now, the rooms and the tables that I'm in, I want to be, and often am, the smallest, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I want to be in the Slack channel with these people that I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Like, how are you doing that? My mentor now, Mike, the last 8 companies he's launched, 8 in a row, have hit $1 million top line in the last 12 months. In 12 months, the 8 companies in a row have hit $1 million top line. That's unheard of. I mean, that's unheard of to have that success track record. And I think to myself, whatever you have figured out when you launch a company, how to get it up to speed quickly. I want that. I want more of that, and I'm going to pay for access to that. So those are some of the biggest things that really started to stand out to me. Specifically, I did not really have systems and playbooks. We talked about this before we hit record. People, like if you read the book E-Myth, people would say, oh, you got to have good systems, you got to have good processes. Oh, by the way, have a good team. I was like, good gracious alive. I've heard this 17 different times. Can somebody please show me what they are talking about when it comes to a system? Somebody, like, is there like something behind a, like a genie in a bottle or something that somebody's just not showing me these systems? I need these systems, and nobody was showing those systems to me. It was like they talked about it, but I never got access to it. And so started to build a framework around what does an actual system look like? What does an actual playbook look like? And so I would create a playbook, and then I would see these other people's playbooks, and I would say, oh, that's a playbook. Yeah, what I have is not a playbook. I have a one-pager. That's a playbook. That's detailed out. No wonder that company has hit $10 million in top-line revenue. So it wasn't, those type of things really began. I just got in the rooms and at the tables with other people who were thinking differently than me. And that has been a huge thing for me personally.
I could spend all day on that topic right there, because that is something, getting in the room, and I'm seeing so much content, so much social media about getting in the room and how important it is. And we firsthand can attest to that. One of our first masterminds, we were in the same position where we looked around and we're like, these are some of the top entrepreneurs in the country. How are we sitting in this room? Yeah. But I think that there's a lot that goes into that. And I want to put some context around this. So this is 2016. If you're open to sharing, I would love to know, do you remember how much it costs to be in that room?
$10,000 a year.
Okay.
$10,000 a year. That was a big thing. And I put it on a credit card.
Yeah.
Put it on a credit card. Yep. And looking back on it, the learnings, that was a pivotal moment, that conversation, to be in that room, to just have access to that person. And I haven't seen him since. Again, I actually wish I could go back and try to find him and just tell him how much I appreciated that, because he doesn't even realize the impact that he made on me in that moment, and how much that my mind was just really blown to be a part of that. And admittedly, I just got addicted to it. I just got addicted to the process of learning and thinking bigger, and realizing what these people have. I feel like I can get there because they have skill. Here's the other thing. You probably have seen this too. There's the other part of this, is to realize these people are not smarter than me. They just have skills I don't have, and I can acquire these skills.
Yep.
So it really comes down to like three things: skills, beliefs, and traits. So like, they believe things that I don't believe. I can adopt that belief. Okay. They have skills I don't have, but oftentimes they've shared with me they didn't have these skills either. So like, okay, well, I can acquire these skills. I don't know how to read financial statements like you do. I want that skill. What did you do? What books did you read? I'll give you an example. Furthermore, this was same group, and but a different meeting. So I met these entrepreneurs who are still friends of mine, and they own like a snack company in Mexico City. And at the time, they were just about to come to the United States, and they were about to cut a deal to go into Whole Foods. And so we're at dinner one night, these two brothers, Diego and Aurora, and they were talking about books. And they said, "Hey, have you read this book, Simple Numbers?" I was like, "No, I haven't." They're like, "Oh, you got to read this book, Simple Numbers." I was like, "Okay, great." So I get this book. I look at the author. It's Greg Crabtree, who is an accountant in Huntsville, Alabama, who co-authored the book Scaling Up. You guys read the book Scaling Up with Vern Harnish? Okay.
Yeah.
He wrote the cash section to Scaling Up. If you read that, it actually says Greg Crabtree. And he's in Huntsville, Alabama, and I've played golf with Greg Crabtree. So I call Greg. I said, "Greg, you're not going to believe this. I'm in Toronto with these guys from Mexico City. They're the first ones that told me about your book. I had no idea you did this." He said, "Yeah, it's funny, Bradley. In Huntsville, I'm an accountant. Everywhere else in the world, I'm an expert." I was like, this blows my mind. And so I had to go to Toronto, meet people who were from Mexico City, to learn about this expert who was literally, I see, playing golf every single weekend. Isn't that crazy?
Oh my gosh. I love that.
That is wild. No, and
it's super wild.
And I love what you're saying here, because we've experienced the same thing. You don't know what you don't know. And
exactly.
When you pay to get into a room, and sometimes it may be more than you want, like,
well, and I think the payment is part of the first part of the process of being willing to go, I'm willing to invest in myself and expand what I think I'm capable of. And then it's reaffirmed with the people that are in the room, because you have to have a barrier of entry, because if not, that changes who sits in the room. Mm-hmm. So that's why I asked how much it costs, is because you have to pay to play a lot of times. And what you get from that is an expanded mindset, is a set of beliefs that when you first hear it, go, is this even possible? I've never heard anyone say that before. That's what the side conversations in Toronto with two guys from Mexico City, like that's what you're paying for.
Yeah. Two things. One, when you pay attention. Mm-hmm. When you pay attention. I mean, it can be the exact same thing. You pay $100 for it. You've seen this, Michael. You charge $100 for it, and they're kind of like, I can take it or leave it. You charge $10,000 for the same thing. They're like, all right, I'm going to listen to this guy. I'm going to listen to this guy. Like, and that's why some of these things have to be charged at what they're charging, because like when you pay attention. I pay $50,000 a year to my coaches right now. My two programs that I'm in.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's absolutely the best investment I have.
Yeah, we're at 6 figures. So we totally believe in investing like in yourselves. Like
you got to.
It's the best investment you'll ever make. And I also think it's good to also invest with folks that may not be from your industry, because it gets you in rooms that not only think bigger, but different the processes, the different systems, the different marketing techniques that sometimes you just don't find in your circle, in your industry. Like by getting out of your comfort zone, getting out and talking to other players within the United States that are doing big things, that are running different types of organizations, you have different thought processes that can literally help you just crush it. I mean, I'll never forget when we paid to get into the room, our very first room, and it was $52,000. Within the next 12 months, we more than doubled. That's when we hit our first 7-figure year ever is a like bring home money. And it was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. Like we almost didn't do it because that was a big investment for us at our time. And now I look back and I'm like, that's one of the best things we ever did.
Yeah. And I mean, when we were getting ready to walk into the room, I remember the feeling of like putting my hand on the handle and feeling like I should not be here.
Yeah, don't belong.
I do not belong in this room. Even if I meet the requirement, there was still this imposter syndrome. And what came out of that was incredible. But I want to go into something that...
How about when we had to introduce ourselves? I was like shaking. I was so like imposter syndrome, like I don't belong in this room. He wants to know what we think our strength is. Like, I don't know what my strength is, but either way. Let's go.
I totally get that. So like this, one of the groups I'm a part of now, a guy who just joined and they, maybe this about a month ago, he joined and they added him to the WhatsApp group. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. This guy is in this group. I should not be in the, I'll just tell you who it is. Ryan Dice. Okay. He started Digital Marketer. So I'm in a group with Ryan. There's no way I should be in a group with Ryan Dice. Okay. Like he is super stat. I think he had over $100 million exit at some point in the past. Like he is crazy good. I'm like, man, what a blessing. What a blessing to be in that group and just get to learn from those type of people. And I think to myself at times, what do I have to offer him? Like, what do I have to offer him? And so, but oftentimes, again, those people are more than willing to be giving and they're good listeners and they're just not what you expect them to be at all. And I can really tell you that the two biggest things I've ever gotten the best investments from is to buy back my time specifically and to be in the rooms and at the tables with other people. So those two things have been absolutely the best investments that I've ever made. And hey, kudos to you. I always tell people, do not trust a coach who does not have a coach. So like, honestly, seriously, I mean that sincerely. If you are looking for somebody to be your coach, to be your mentor, one thing I'd ask them is like, well, who's your mentor? Because if they're not embodying their own coaching, like I don't think you can be a good coach if you're not coachable yourself, because so much of it is, you got to be able to, listen, and you got to be able to take feedback. And so I think that kudos to you guys. No surprise that you've made those investments yourself. And I think that that's so healthy because you say, I don't have it all figured out. We're trying to get better along the way too. And whatever we learn, we're going to pass that down to you guys.
Man, you are preaching to the choir right now. We tell that to everybody. It's like your coach needs a coach. I don't care how, because everybody's always trying to get you can learn something from everyone. And especially when you're, I don't know. I love it. Again, I'll go back to, you don't know what you don't know. And so you have to get into rooms to help you learn the things that you aren't even aware that you're missing. Like it's incredible. So I'd love to hear, so you just walked us through your journey. And you have a saying, Rainmaker to architect. I would love for you to dive in and even share how your personal journey, how you went from the Rainmaker in your business to the architect in your business and what that did for you when that happened. Yeah.
So obviously I didn't have that language around being the Rainmaker of my business, right? I mean, I didn't have that language looking back on it, but that's what I did. All the production requirements, everything went through me. And so like, here's the idea. And I'm not being a contrarian around this, but we've all seen Unique Ability, Dan Sullivan's book, or Strength Finders, etc. And those books will ask you, what is the thing that you're the best in the world at? Like, what are you the best at? And here's what I think small business owners in particular hear. They say, well, I'm really good at sales. I'm really good at business development. Yeah, I'm really good at customer service. I'm really good at serving the customers. And you are. And so they hear that and then they double down on that. Well, that's what I did. And so the thing about that is that you just simply run out of time. And there's not enough time in the day for you to be able to scale the business. Now, it can be the thing that you might need initially to get the business off the ground, to get some lift, but it's not the thing that's going to be able to scale it. So where does that happen? I think it happens somewhere around $500,000 in top line revenue, regardless of the business. I think it's somewhere in there. I think maybe you could hit seven figures if you're in a certain boat, in a certain market. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could get it there. I don't think you can get it past that. I really don't. So like if your vision is big enough, it's going to require a team, and to have a team, you're going to have systems to be able to do it. So as I began to kind of look through, okay, I've got to transition from being the Rainmaker of my business. How do I want to do this? And so it was being in the rooms that these people would show me playbooks, structure, and I would say, okay, I'm going to do that. I tell you, I later on became an EOS implementer. I'm not an EOS implementer anymore, but that became a very good basis for things. And so I was a professional implementer. That was the actual basis of my coaching program initially. I transitioned out of that, and we'll talk about that if you want me to, as to why specifically. But I really do love the traction, EOS. That methodology is really fantastic stuff. I don't think it's great for small businesses, but we'll come back to that. So really, when you make the transition from becoming the Rainmaker to the architect of your business, you start to see yourself differently. You become the architect of your business, which means you create the actual structure in the organization that's needed for it to be able to scale. The words you use matter. So we talk about creating assets. So when a little saying for you is income follows assets. We were just at the beach. I was at a retreat with some folks last week, actually. And we were talking about this, like we were at the Airbnb literally across the street from the beach. And we were talking about how much that Airbnb can rent out per night compared to the house that's just across the street. Okay. Similar size. So the idea is that asset that's on the beach can garner more in, nightly rental on Airbnb, right? Because it's on the beach. So therefore, income follows assets. And I think the exact same thing is true in our business. We just don't use that language. So that unique way that you sell is an asset to the business. The way you onboard a client is a unique asset to the business. And the way that I share with people now is any frustration or stress that you have is likely an asset deficiency. And so if you can think in terms of, I've got this frustration, what's the asset I can actually build? Sometimes it's a playbook. Sometimes it's a pitch deck. Sometimes it's a offer stack PDF or something like that. I mean, it can be different things. Playbooks can be one of those. Those are the ones that oftentimes people talk about, playbooks or SOPs. I like to use playbooks instead of SOPs. But that language that you use really matters because you start to see yourself differently. Instead of everything going through you, now you've actually got the structure, the system in place that you can hand that off to be able to get it through other people, specifically your team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're talking about removing yourself as the bottleneck and really exactly. Creating this, standard operating procedure, SOPs, playbooks. How do you clone yourself? How do you duplicate yourself? Which I love. But as a business owner, I'm listening to this and I'm like, yes, Bradley, I'm in it. I understand. Now what do I do? Because when I look at my business, there's multiple points of frustration. And I might not have the time or revenue to hire somebody. So where would you encourage somebody to start in this situation?
Well, I would definitely argue against the fact that you say that, or somebody else says that they don't have the time. I think that you do have the time. It's where you point your time. So I shared this with a business owner yesterday that he made a comment. He said, yeah, sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think you have to sometimes shift it into low gear and slow down to speed up. No business owner listening to this ever wants to go backwards. Nobody wants to go backwards, but they can get the concept of maybe I need to slow this down a little bit to speed up. Okay, so I'll give you kind of a hack here. I did this literally yesterday with somebody. So I pulled up Google Docs and we were talking about something. And so I dictated out basically what the business owner was talking about. So I dictated it out, and it was probably half of a page on a Google Doc, something like that. I copied, pasted that into ChatGPT and said, hey, I need you to reorganize this and make this into a playbook. And it did amazing. And I said, there you go. There is the beginning. Is it a done playbook? No, it's not. It's not a done playbook, right? It's not at all, but it's the beginning of it. I showed a few other people. I said, do you have a playbook for how you want to onboard your new customers or clients? They're like, no. But by the way, that's an asset to the business.
Yeah.
I said, we'll create one. Use ChatGPT. It will get you started. Because when I was in college, I remember I had a paper that was due, and I waited till the last minute, of course. I remember seeing the cursor just blink. I was like, man, I don't even know where to start. And I think a lot of business owners truly don't know where to start. And the thing about it is, your team, you're right, they cannot read your mind. They cannot read your mind. They can read a document. And so if you can just begin to get it out of your head and utilize a tool like ChatGPT to begin to kind of organize it, that has been a huge catalyst in 5 or 10 minutes for people to be able to say, oh, I actually can create that playbook. I've got a client who loves to hunt. I think, Michael, you're a big hunter, if I'm not mistaken. Are you? I'm not a big hunter.
Oh yeah, I've done so. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I just went bass fishing for the first time, and I'm like, I need to become a professional bass fisherman. This is fun.
All the outdoors things.
Well, it's skill acquisition. You could do that. So I told him, I said, you've got so much drive time to these places around the country. You could be cranking out these playbooks, because he was thinking he's going to have this massive session where he sits there and locks himself into a room for 2 weeks, into a dark room, and he comes out with like 72 playbooks. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you build a playbook on the fly. And so I think when people begin to kind of realize, not lower the bar, but actually just get started in something and then maybe use a tool like that, then they begin to say, oh, okay, yeah, I actually can begin to create an onboarding playbook for a new team member, an onboarding playbook for a new customer. And obviously, if they work with you, you give them a lot of that stuff that's going to be the cheat sheets. They're like, oh my gosh, I already have this. I can adopt it and kind of modify it a little bit to how we do things here. That's awesome. They already have a lot of those things that they can get from you. They just need to be able to begin to build those and buy into the idea that income follows assets. And so at the end of the day, what you want to get to the point is that, let's say you're in insurance, you want to have a second office or a third office. One day you plop down in front of them and say, hey, we're interviewing you for another office. You plop down that operating system and they go through it and they say,
yep,
yeah, we don't have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because everything is right here. You want to know how we're going to get customers? Here it is. You want to know how we onboard people? Here it is. You want to know how we train our team? Here it is. You want to know what word tracks we use? Here it is. You want to know the playbook? Like, everything is in that operating system. I think that is the thing, but you have to get started in doing it, not just waiting until you're going to have these 2 weeks with nothing to do that you're going to lock yourself into a room. That's a fallacy.
Yep.
Yeah, and that'll never happen. You will not have those dark weeks where you can dip out. And I think, to echo this point, when we got started and we were scratch, Michael's methodology was, our insurance office needs to run like McDonald's. If you get a cheeseburger in New York, if you get a cheeseburger in LA, it's the exact same cheeseburger. And I think when you're listening to this, and I know it can be intimidating for me, where I would start it as business owner, is I would look at things that I can do on autopilot, which is usually an admin task, and I would record myself. Like, all right, let me record it so you can hear tonality, you can hear inflection, you can hear how I would say that. And then that one piece of asset can be kicked into so much technology now. Like, this is what we need to be leveraging AI for, is the stuff that we really can delegate out, and they can do it so much faster that we just put our finishing touches on it. So I love that you brought that up.
So actually, if people have not watched that movie, The Founder, have you guys seen that movie?
Yes.
The Founder?
So good.
Fantastic
Ray
movie.
Kroc just took it over, man.
He did. Now, obviously, he wasn't the greatest person, the way he treated the McDonald's brothers and all that sort of thing. But like, one of the business things I want to share with that is that they loved the Speedy system. Like, they saw it.
Yeah.
But Ray Kroc saw that as like, that's the asset.
Yes.
That is the thing. And he built the largest, restaurant in the world by far based off that thing. Now, he did a really good job of then being able to, build it out and get people bought into the franchise, et cetera. But I think that he saw that as an asset far more than what they saw it as.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would agree. And I love how you brought up, because right now, I believe in our country, everyone okay, let's get a side hustle, or, hey, we need multiple businesses to get to whatever revenue point we want to be at. And what you're hitting on, systems are so dang important and critical. And I know as a young business owner, I used to think, man, that costs money. I can just devote the time, which is, I ran into the same issue as you. I would work and work and work and work and work and work until I couldn't fit, it wore on me mentally, physically. And so I would encourage you to flip even that mindset, because there's folks out there like you, like Courtney and I, that have been there. We've done it. We've created the blueprint for success. Flip your mindset from, man, that's going to cost me time, or that's going to cost me money, to how much time can this save me, and how much better of a business owner will this make me? Yeah. The delegation is something I really struggled with as a young business owner, just not to my team, but also to third parties that could help me run more efficiently, faster, quicker, which in return helped me make way more money than I was ever investing into the delegation process. And so that's just the one thing that just came to my mind with you talking about this. I think it's so critical, and something that I struggled with so much that I'm like, man, if I could reverse those 3 to 4 to 5 years of learning, what could my business have been if I would have just asked for help so much earlier?
Well, and I think it's also when you're talking about asking for help or getting in the room or hiring in your business, you need to look at it as not a what, but a who. Who do I need? Who do I need to partner with? Who do I need to hire? Because if you already have, your points of frustration systemized, then when you need to hire somebody, just like you're saying, Bradley, here is everything that you need to know about your position. I have found the who, and this is what you do. So I think it's just talking about pure alignment, and something that you love to talk about, clarity in your business, because it allows you to run your business like a CEO versus a Rainmaker, which can burn you out so fast.
I want to say that a couple things around what both of you are saying there. So, Michael, first, for what you're commenting on, when you get your team, when you establish the standard of how you want your playbooks to look, you can invite and solicit your team to help you build the playbooks with you. It doesn't all have to sit on your shoulders. But here's the thing. You have to establish what the standard of a playbook looks like first. I'm not kidding with this. I literally have a playbook that says how to create a playbook. And it says, you're going to create a playbook using this font in this color. I want the title in this font. I want heading 1 in this font. I want the body in this font. Here's why. If I create a playbook and it looks this way, and then my EA creates a playbook and it's in Arial, it just looks different. It just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel on brand. It feels different. And then you get everybody in your teams creating playbooks that are all over the board. And so standardizing even the font, the colors, the way you want things to be, that seems insignificant. It's not about the font. It's about what you're trying to instill into the organization. Everything we do is a certain way. You don't go to one Starbucks and they're in a different font, or they have a totally different menu. They just don't do that way. And so they've been able to build the business, to that level. So inviting your team to help you create the playbooks, but they have to have a standard of what the playbook actually needs to look like first, which is what you have to be able to establish. So that's one. And then whenever you were saying who, not how, sometimes the who is who in my group, my mastermind group. I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask them. So like we use HubSpot in one of the companies. And so we were trying to embed this text message reminder thing with HubSpot. Well, the one we were using, which I think is called Sales Message, it just wasn't going great. And it was only like a couple messages. So I reached out to the group and I said, hey, does anybody have a text? And of course, like within 5 minutes, you get this thing. And we're like, oh, perfect. Never heard of that one. Great. Yeah. So the EA and plugged it in. And it's been a great solution. So to your point, I do that's another reason why masterminds or being in the rooms is so great, is because like, what am I going to do? Google the best one? I mean, I could do that, or I could just send one text message to the companies that already use this, and they're going to give me the answer to that. So being willing to raise your hand and say, I don't know, is like one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur to do, and something I even struggle with to this day. But to raise my hand and say, will you help me, is like a huge thing to do. But if you're willing to take that step and be vulnerable with people, man, it's amazing how many people rally around you to help you.
Oh, amazing what happens when you drop the ego. Ego can be a great thing. It protects us, but sometimes it can also really hold us back. And so I love the thing that came to mind when you're talking about these systems and everything is systems equal consistency, and consistency equals clarity and accountability. If everyone in your team is clear of how to operate, what it looks like, that also means that, number one, they know how to do it, but two, it's easy to hold accountable. And not only from a team standpoint, but also from a leadership management standpoint. So I love what you're doing. I dig it. I think it's critical.
You know, when you were talking about clarity, I'll share this too. I think generalizations kill clarity. Yeah. I think that, when you talk to people, I'm sure you can relate to that. I mean, because I can relate to this because I was this person. Is that somebody in the past had said, so what are you wanting to do in your business? I would have given you an answer of like, I don't know. I want to grow. I want to do more. And if somebody pushed me in and was like, well, how much more? I mean, what do you want top line revenue to be? What do you want profit to be? What do you want your personal income to be? What do you want I had no answers. I just knew I wanted to do more. And I think so often too, that we just sometimes don't look past 1 year. We just kind of like, it becomes like 1 year sprints, like over and over and over and over again, versus where are we trying to go over the next 3 years? Because 3 years will come quickly. I mean, if you believe it, it's crazy enough. Like 3 years ago, we were in the heart of the pandemic.
I knew you were going to say that. I was like, don't say it. Don't bring it up.
I know, but it's crazy how much has happened during that 3 year period of time. And so we share what a blueprint is in a business is where are you going in 3 years, where are you going this year, and where are you going over the next 90 days. But if you're not clear on it, your team sure as hell is not going to be clear on it. Yeah. And oftentimes when I've really pushed people on that myself, they were like I was. They were like, honestly, I really don't know. I don't know. I don't really have it. Well, that's probably the first place to start, is to get really clear on what it is that you want out of the business, because the business can be the conduit to everything that you're wanting to accomplish in your life. The business can be the conduit to make that happen. So that's what I call a blueprint, is where you're going in 3 years, 1 year, and over the next 90 days. And I like the 90-day cycle. So hopefully that serves some of your audience. You may have a different opinion on that. That's just kind of what's been good for me to kind of framework those three things.
No, I dig it.
Yeah, because you want it to, I mean, this is like Think and Grow Rich. Like one of the basic principles of Think and Grow Rich is a definite purpose. Like where are we going, and buying your team in on the vision. And I think it's really important to be specific, because I understand exactly what you're talking about, Bradley, when it's, well, I want to have more money and I want to have more time with my family. And those words don't give me anything, because that looks very different to a lot of different people. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? Get specific. If there's if I can ask another follow-up question, it's not done. Like it's to where you and I, regardless of our situations, both understand exactly what I mean when I say, I want to make $467,000 this year, bring home income. Yep. There's no arguing that. There's no follow-up question to that. So I love that you bring up the specificity of that.
So Bradley,
yeah, for sure.
If we, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, follow you, support you, ask you questions, how are they going to do that?
Yeah. I'm not a super social media is admittedly my weakness. That's not like my thing is social media. It probably needs to be more, but I am more active on Twitter and LinkedIn. I've really found I love those platforms, so they can connect with me at Bradley Hamner on there. And then I am the host of the Club Capital leadership podcast, which you've come on and you're going to come back on. We're going to have you guys back on. So it's been long overdue to have you guys come back on. So if anybody's listening and hasn't heard our podcast, love to be able to have you pop over there. And, we have some great guests like you to be able to come on. And then I share some short 5 to 8 minute messages on Friday with people too.
No, well, this has been great, Bradley. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. For those of you that are listening right now, we appreciate you. We appreciate your support. As always, time is the most important and valuable asset that we all have. We appreciate you spending time with us today. Go out, make it great. Bradley, thank you again.